Thank you again, Nick, for the presentation. Beautiful. To the candidates, the format we have is we're going to give you 4 minutes for an opening presentation. Once all three of you have done that, we will then go to questions from the members, and they can be directed to either one of you or all of you, but you all get to respond. The question format, you've got 2 minutes to respond. Our timer is right here in front, James Ashby. And at the end, you'll get a 2-minute summation. If one of your opponents says something that you don't like, hold your rebuttal for the summation, not try to get back and forth, because it's the questions from the members right now.
Mr. President, one of the candidates not here. Was Mr. Bush invited?
He was invited multiple times and never responded in any way, shape, or form. And I used the website that was on the Secretary of State's contact point for candidates.
Okay, so the dog catcher was invited.
In discussing that with these candidates, I don't remember which one of them told me, or maybe multiple, that in all the forums they've had around the states, he has not been at any of them.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that we, but he was invited.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. We're going to. The ballot order, as I've told people earlier today, that's what I got off the Secretary of State's website, so we just use that. We'll go down that order, and then in summation, we'll go in reverse order. So, Davey Edwards, you're
4 minutes.
Hello, I'm Davey Edwards, and thank you for having me here today. It's an honor to be here in front of y'all to be able to talk about why it's important for this election, especially the race for Commissioner of the Texas General Land Office. First of all, I'd like to say that my credentials are in land surveying. I'm a licensed state land surveyor for the state of Texas. There's about 60 of us in the entire state of Texas. And what we do, we work with the Texas General Land Office in the production of field notes for the issuance of patents, either corrected or for patent on titles. And I'm also a federal surveyor under the United States Department of Interior, where we do the same type of work but for the federal government. And in Texas, we're the licensed state land surveyors, the only ones that are able to have their records filed in the archives. So we work directly with the survey department, the legal staff, the patents clerk, various aspects of the sovereignty of land. But on top of that, I have a degree in geospatial surveying engineering and a doctorate degree in geoscience, where I studied international and interstate boundaries. And I was able to assist Mr. Patterson and his administration in the General Land Office when the federal government came in and was staking claims on 90,000 acres along the Red River. And through that connection, I was connected into Washington, D.C. To assist them in understanding what the issues were so that they could get a bill passed. And ultimately, as you heard of last year, the Bureau of Land Management settled that lawsuit in favor of Texas. So, as many of y'all know, the issue at hand, especially with this race and why it's so historical, is because of the Alamo. And as you will probably hear from my opponents that haven't made it here today, that the Alamo is now under the stewardship of the Texas General Land Office, and the Commissioner has sole responsibility over what goes on with the Land Office. And the current Commissioner, over the last 3 years, has spent his time reimagining the Alamo with this plan to change, alter the historical and architectural integrity of the Shrine of Liberty of Texas. And as a sixth-generation Texan, it really has gotten me riled up, but I have spent my time going around the state of Texas, listening to Texans, talking with Texans, and finding out from them that the majority of Texans want to keep the shrine as a shrine and not as a museum, and not to alter, change anything of the historical integrity of the Alamo. And so what I would like to do is get in there and take the current commissioner out of office, use my credentials for the general land office, and save the Alamo from being reimagined, but being remembered. And I ask for y'all to look into that, to go to my website. I have some stuff on the back, and you'll get to know me a little bit better. My time's up.
Who wants to stand in for George?
Can I stand?
Is George P. Bush here? Is the gentleman present? Okay. Terry Patterson?
Well, thank you, Steve, and thank you all for being here. I see a lot of familiar faces. I know there's some folks motivated in Tarrant County because I see you everywhere I go. I'm Jerry Patterson. I'm the former commissioner of the Texas General Land Office. I grew up in Houston. I went to Texas A&M, where I spent 5.5 years cramming a normal 4-year course of study into, graduating the top 75% of my class, and joined the United States Marine Corps, where I served 24 years total active in reserve, including a tour of duty in Vietnam. I was a state senator for 6 years. I authored the Texas Right to Carry law in 1995. And how many of y'all have been involved in a shootout at a 4-way stop? None of you. That's my point. We can make good choices if government lets us. I do have to tell you a little bit about a person I'm extremely proud of. My son, Travis, is the 5th consecutive generation of my family with overseas wartime service. His current gig is piloting Marine One for President Trump. I'm a proud dad. He's a lieutenant colonel. He'll be retiring in about 3 years, coming back to Texas. I had no intention of running for office ever again. I'm 71 years old. I was in blissful retirement making documentary movies about Texas history. I watched what was happening at the land office as it relates to the Alamo, as it relates to Hurricane Harvey recovery, and as it relates to hiding out for 3 years and having press conferences in which the press is not allowed to attend. What do you expect, considering what we've seen so far in this election? And so I decided I'd try to recruit a candidate that had money or name ID or both. Couldn't find one that would do it, and so I decided to do it myself. I have to tell you, you have some good choices. I mean, these two gentlemen, they are my friends. We are united in a common goal to ensure that George P. Bush is no longer commissioner of the Texas General Land Office. We have each pledged to support emphatically, enthusiastically, with our money, marbles, and chalk, any one of us that gets in a runoff against Commissioner Bush. It is an abomination what is occurring today, not only at the Alamo, which we really don't know what is occurring today because Commissioner Bush refuses to comply with open records requests as to the operations of the Alamo. As in fact, the State Republican Executive Committee voted 57-1 to censure Commissioner Bush for his lack of transparency. And in December, the State Senate Finance Committee chewed him a new earlobe, if you will, on the same subject. And nothing has changed. The other issue, not a big issue here in Tarrant County, but the administration of the Harvey recovery has been a disaster. There's been some news on that lately. And I am convinced that we cannot tolerate another 4 years of where's George P. Bush. He has yet to attend a candidate forum. I was told he was going to be over at where we are over at Hearst. People have shown up on his behalf. That's the first time that's occurred. And I will give you quick examples. Lano Tea Party had him scheduled to speak at their dinner in February the 20th. When they found out he had opposition, they changed the format to a candidate forum, and he canceled. In other words, he will not appear with any of us. That is not leadership. That's secretive. That's elusive. That's evasive. And frankly, it's a little weird. Every 4 years or every 2 years, we, incumbents and challengers, have a notice to appear before the voters. And I'm sorry, that's kind of a sacred trust. He has failed to appear. We have. I'd like your vote. And if I'm not in first place, pick one of these other two gentlemen. Thank you very much. God bless Texas.
Thank y'all so much. I'm a neighbor. I grew up over Dallas County. My family's been there since 1890. I grew up in Irving, been in Garland since 74, and then I was on the Mesquite Fire Department for 31 years. So that's part of my background. My father and grandfather, they had a Range Brothers Gas and Oil, so I worked in that field growing up. But I want to tell y'all something. This man back here, Nick Adams, I got to second everything he said. That was fantastic, and he couldn't be more right about, we are losing our culture, we are losing our history, and we're losing our heritage, and one of the biggest culprits in the whole thing is this George P. Bush, and he's in state government. He is a scoundrel, a scallywag, and a carpetbagger of the first degree, and we have got to get him out of there. And right now, there's probably 80% of the people in this state still don't know what he's trying to do to the Alamo. Did y'all know last week, you probably hadn't heard this, he came out in favor of abolishing Confederate Heroes Day in the state of Texas. Now, in the old days, at best, he would have been run out of town on a rail, tarred and feathered if he didn't get hung from the nearest live oak tree. This is beyond absurd. We have got to defeat this rascal, and to do it, we're going to have, what happened to the mic here? Is it still going? Okay, we're going to have all of y'all's help. Okay, we guys are preaching it as much as we can preach it, but we can't get it out here going to these groups of 50 and 100 people, 200 max. We need y'all's help. We need you to contact everybody you know in the state of Texas and ask them to contact everybody they know. And with modern media and communications, in a week, we can reach every voter in the state of Texas. And we've been at this for 5 months, and we probably still only got 20% at best knowledgeable. That has got to change, and change fast, or we're going to be stuck with that man, and it's going to be a disaster. Because once this election's over with and the political heat is off, he is right in bed with that San Antonio Radical City Council and Mayor, the Castro brothers. They want the battle out of there. They want the cenotaph of the defender's name drug out, probably destroyed it in the process, like they did that Confederate statue down there in Travis Park. If we don't get the word out and get him defeated, that's going to happen as sure as what I'm standing here. So I'm asking all of y'all to become warriors, join the Army, cross the line, and help us in the next 2 weeks get this spread. We barely got 2 weeks left before early voting starts, folks. And that has got to change. 80% of these people do not know. And we can't all three of us do it. We need you. And we need you telling everybody you know, and them telling everybody they know. And if we do that, we will get shut of this guy. He will be defeated in a landslide. And that's what's got to happen if we're going to save the Alamo and save our heritage and save our culture. That's it. Now, I got 1 minute left. I'll tell you real quick. Like I said, my family, they were in the oil business. I've had experience in that. I've had some oil and gas lease experience to a small extent in my own family. I got experience in that. I was on the fire department. I've dealt with storms and tornadoes, so I know a little bit about that. And also, wasn't in the service, but I've seen some pretty traumatic things, so I can empathize with the veterans. And one of the things I want to do is improve services to them, especially in housing and in mental health. This 22 suicides a day has got to stop. Okay? So those would be some of my other priorities besides the Alamo. But I'll yield the rest of my time. I just want y'all to please take that serious and get the word out. And we have got to beat this guy. We can beat him. We will beat him with y'all's help. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, we will take the questions from the members. And as I said, you can direct it to anyone or collectively to all of them. Let's start. Kurt?
Yes, Kurt Hyde from Denton County Republican Assembly. And my question has to do with that controversy over the Red River and the BLM. And now that we're into this, we've solved this short term. What about the long-term problem? Do you think we can attempt to change that Red River Compact law so that it's no longer like based on that boundary kind of stuff, and maybe do like other states have done and use the middle of the river? And so this, I guess, primarily to Davy Edwards, but also to the others, about the long-term thing. Granted, we got the first one fixed, but could we change, well, what would you think we could do to change it long-term? Sorry if I ran over.
Directed to Mr. Edwards, so we'll start there, but we're going to come across the... Dave?
Well, I do give a 3-hour lecture on the Red River, but I'll condense it, just for Jerry. But as far as the Red River, it became the boundary between Spain and the United States in the 1819 Adams-on-East Treaty. And out of the 1923 Supreme Court decision between Texas and Oklahoma, it was at the south bank of the Red River. There's another lawsuit, that Stafford versus King, that sets the dignity of calls and sets a natural boundary above all other monumental boundaries, like calls to distances or to an iron rod. The call to a river is a natural boundary, and that's the highest dignity of call, because everybody can see a natural boundary and point towards it. And so whenever they were dealing with whether or not the boundary was where the Bureau of Land Management were setting monuments almost 2 miles away from the river's edge, versus where the river is today, was the huge issue between the two. Now, the 2000 Red River Compact set the vegetation line between aquatic vegetation and upland vegetation at that boundary. So being able to go out there and ever changing it or making it a static position is not as well as using the natural position of where it goes from ebb and flow. I'm currently working on a project right now in Clay County where they want me to survey the river so that they know how much accretion has occurred, just to be protective of if there is another chance the federal government may come and make another claim. One of the things I would like to do, because the compact only extended between Oklahoma and Texas in 2000 Red River Boundary Compact, is also include Arkansas, because of some avulsionary actions that have gone on between Texas and Arkansas that are causing some issue in their jurisdictional line. So that's one thing I'd like to do as commissioner once I'm elected.
I agree. No, as to changing that boundary, the difficulty is, as Davey pointed out, there was a treaty between Spain and the United States in 1819 that set that boundary, and that at that time was a national boundary. Now it's a boundary between the state of Oklahoma and Texas. But, you know, the real issue here is the encroachment on private property, not the encroachment on the boundary between Oklahoma and Texas. Right. And private property owners can have title to land in Texas and land in Oklahoma. So this was more of an affront to private property owners than it was to the state of Texas. And what we did at that time, when this started, the land office needed to have standing in a court of law in order to be able to intervene. And to have standing, you must have something at risk. I'm not a lawyer, but that's basically what it says. And so we had to find state ownership of something, mineral or surface acreage. And we did that, and we used Davey Services to do that, to find out that we own some minerals. We, being the Permanent School Fund, owned some minerals that gave us standing to intervene in the lawsuit. And essentially, I've talked to the attorney that represented the General Land Office under Commissioner Bush's tenure. And he basically said the BLM got real tired of this and decided to basically cut and run because they didn't want to put up with this anymore. And the BLM had a premise that, well, this is U.S. land, so we have to put a management plan in place. I'm sorry, private ownership is a pretty good management plan of land. And in Texas, we are blessed with the fact there is an infinitesimal amount of BLM land, and we don't have to mess with them. That's unlike other western states. But anyway, the property rights individual are paramount, and Texas is unique in that private property is predominant over government property.
I've got one question. It's my understanding, right, that when y'all had this, both of y'all were working on this, that Mr. Bush was of no assistance there initially. He tried to wash his hands of it, not defend the state lands of Texas or the individuals. Is that right?
He was trying to avoid getting intervened.
Okay.
I thought he was still in Florida.
Well, once again, it looks like he shirked his duty totally. I think he's batting 1,000%. Since he's been in there, it's been pretty much a disaster, everything he's touched. I don't have anything to add to what these gentlemen said as far as the Red River. I'm sure we'll probably get into this, but you know, he come in there, he fired all these good people. One of the things was Commissioner Patterson had developed this rapid response team for these storm disasters, and he went in and fired half of them, the other half quit thinking they were going to be fired. And then we had Hurricane Harvey hit, and that's why we were caught flat-footed. He'd already got shut all those people, and we were starting, you know, from scratch. So that was a disaster. The Alamo thing, fiasco, disaster, both what the elements in the plan and the funding. And y'all know the mess about the money and how he's hidden the money and created all these shell corporations and that whole fiasco. So as far as I can see, everything he has done since he took over that office has been pretty much a bad situation. So that's why, again, I emphasize we have got to get him defeated. Thank you.
Okay, Ruth?
Okay. Hi, my name is Ruth Armfield from Denton County Republican Assembly. I've been told that a border, Trump's border wall is not feasible because of, the river, the cliffs, the landscape of the area. Because of the animal migration, the rain. So what do you guys think about that? Is it true? I mean, is it unfeasible to do that, to the wall?
Well, whenever someone talks about building a wall, a physical structure from Boca Chica at the mouth of the Rio Grande to San Ysidro or the mouth of the San Diego River, or at least, in Texas, I asked them to Google Santa Elena Canyon in the Rio Grande and tell me where you're going to put that wall in that picture of the Rio Grande with 1,000-foot bluffs on every side. The point is, we need 100% absolute border security by whatever means works. And in some places that's a physical barrier, such as a wall. I may be the only candidate in this race that has ever actually designed and implemented a defensive position. And I know in a defensive position, you cannot rely solely on physical barriers. And part of the thing you want to do in a defensive position is channelize your invading or your enemy into a particular locale where they can either be captured, killed, wounded, chased away, whatever it is. So we do not need a physical barrier on the entire border of the state of Texas, or for that matter, New Mexico, Arizona, and California. We need 100% border security, and you also have to recognize that of those who are here illegally, 40% of them came here legally, and they overstayed their visa. So the idea that we have put so much in this, I'm going to build a wall on the entire border. There are property rights issues. There are provisions in federal law that were used in World War II where the federal government could merely go to court and file a document and you lost your property. And that has been discussed in some places along the Rio Grande. Border security, by whatever means. That's what we need to do.
I want to agree with all of that. It reminds me of something I wanted to address the prior gentleman talking about DACA. That is the one thing I'm disappointed in President Trump. He said he was going to go in there on day one and cancel that thing, and we wouldn't be dealing with this. It wouldn't be a political football, but he kicked it over to Congress, and now it's part of the negotiation. So I think that was a mistake, and I agree with him. You leave those people, and it's a sad situation, but it's just an invitation for more people to come break the law and think they're going to get away with it. So anyway, that's my position on that. Now, as far as the wall, I agree with what he said. And I think President Trump agrees too. He doesn't want a wall on every inch of the thing, only where it's going to be beneficial. And I would be totally for that. I would be for having the land office in any way that they could cooperate with the Trump administration, any way they could assist them in building the wall where it's needed. In other areas, like Commissioner Patterson said, other means can be used, whatever's most effective. But I think the border ought to be 100% secure. I think it's a fiasco that to this day, it's still not. We could have put the Texas National Guard, the U.S. Army, whatever it took, that border could have been secured in a matter of days if we were serious. And I mean a long time ago. This has gone on a long time, and it is beyond ridiculous. Either you have a country or you don't. And you let people just swarm in, you don't have a country, not for long, like that man said. We keep this up, we're going to be gone before long. We better get serious.
Mr. Patterson alluded to a while ago that we have private property issues for a border wall. As y'all know, the international boundary line is in the middle of the Rio Grande River, so there's a physical obstruction of actually building a wall down the middle of the river. So where are you going to put it? Well, you got to put it up on the bank, somewhere where it's not going to get washed away or float away, and make it secure. So what are you giving up? Well, the state has mineral interest in the bed of the river from the middle of the river to the gradient boundary on the north bank of the river. Then you have private ownership that goes up from there, in which these farmers down there in certain areas of El Paso, Rio Grande Valley, and down in the Brownsville and McAllen area that use that for farming and ranching. They have to have access to water. So there are some obstructions to actually building physical walls in certain areas. I agree. We need security. What's the wall going to look like? Well, as land commissioner, I want to work real close with the Trump administration in order to get a wall built, physical or virtual. Talked with some Texas Rangers who have worked along the border, and their suggestion is once we can get a border put between El Paso and California, we can start bringing some of those resources into Texas, and so that we can have more feet on the ground, more eyes in the air, drones, technologies out there, and those are the things that I would like to work closely with so that we can protect the private property owners down along the Rio Grande.
TJ Scott, Central Texas Republican Assembly. I understand that the Alamo is a sexy thing, and that's a good, remember the Alamo fight, and the hurricane stuff. What about the other things? I mean, Jerry, what percentage of your time when you were the commissioner for 8 years? How long? 12 years? I mean, did you put on the Alamo, and how much of your time was for the Veterans Land Commission and the school stuff and the other things that the GLO does? What percentage, what do you do most of the time?
Well, it varied quite a bit depending on which grenade was blowing up at any particular time. And right now, when I return or, whatever, some tremendous amount of time will be spent on the Alamo because that's where the help is needed. Hurricane Harvey, not so much, because those people, many of them have moved away from Texas, and many of them have abandoned their homes. Many of those homes are abandoned in communities where now they don't have anybody to go to work. Rockport, Aransas Pass, Port Aransas. It is a disaster along the Texas coast, and that is solely because the land office made a conscious decision not to implement temporary emergency shelter-in-place housing. I'll give you a quick example. The state of Louisiana in August of 2016 had catastrophic floods in Baton Rouge. There were 30,000 people homeless. The state of Louisiana implemented with FEMA's agreement the shelter-in-place at home program. In 4 months, they had 10,017 Louisianans' homes temporarily repaired, where, when I say temporarily repaired, they had electricity, they had heating, they had air conditioner, they had plumbing, and they had the house dried in, and so they could go back to their home and begin their recovery. 10,017 homes in Louisiana, 4 months after those floods. 4 months after Harvey, the Texas General Land Office had 2 homes done. And they made a conscious decision to use trailers instead of homes and create trailer parks because FEMA was 100% pay on trailers. I will tell you, that is damn near criminal. And that was a decision so they could look like a fiscally conservative, Republican, because there's a 10% state or local match, which I know, having dealt with a hurricane before, you can get FEMA to negotiate that 10% away if you go to FEMA and say, you're spending $2.7 million a day to keep people in hotels. For everyone I get out of that hotel that's costing you money, you make the 10% deal. But they didn't have the ability to do that.
As you may alluded to, there are many facets of the Commissioner of the Texas General Land Office, including the stewardship of the sovereignty of our lands, generating revenue for the Permanent School Fund, which helps funds Texas education, coastal maintenance, preservation, the Veterans Land Board, now the Alamo, hurricane relief efforts, disaster recovery in case of an oil spill along the coastline. There are so many things that have to be done, that yet the current commissioner has gone in there, spent the last, whole term trying to reimagine the Alamo so that he can build a political portfolio to move to a higher office. That's the only reason that he's in office. And he's trying to make himself look good, which right now, I'm not coming to these forums and listening to the candidates who have a passion for Texas and have a passion for the Texas General Land Office. He's out, I don't know where he's at, honestly. But we're here, and we're going to be your voice. But we need you as Texans to put us into the office and get the current commissioner out of office. This is going to be one of those historic elections, and you've alluded to the issues at hand. When you start to neglect those positions, those other departments that need it, like Hurricane Harvey issue, what I deal with on a regular basis with the permanent school fund, getting people's lands patented so that they can go out and generate revenue for themselves and generate revenue for the state. We do have an issue here, and it's up to you guys getting out to the voters and picking out who you think is going to be best suited for this position. You'll address it.
Well, again, I agree with all of that. And as Commissioner Patterson said, there's multiple facets to the land office, and I know that. I've had experience in some of them. I'm not a land surveyor, but I've had experience in the others. And where I know I'm not the best expert, I know how, and I would hire the people that are the best experts. So it will all be covered. But as Commissioner Patterson said, right now, the grenade that's laying there with the pin already pulled is the Alamo. And it's the most urgent thing that needs addressing, and that's what we'll do. And the one thing I would like to mention about the land office, the permanent school fund, as y'all know, is funded by the gas and oil royalties off the public lands. And I just recently had a little bit of personal experience in that. They found out my grandfather had kept some mineral rights on some property that we didn't know about anyway. There's 3 oil wells drilled. Well, anyway, they sent me a thing that was a 1 month value of the gas and oil was $12,143. Y'all know what my check was? $25.91 out of $12,000. Now, I hope we ain't got that kind of deal with our permanent school fund. I've now been told that we've got a straight 25% off the top, cream off the top, which may sound good, but to me, if it's my oil, I think I ought to get half the value of it. Let's go half. Sounds reasonable to me. So I would be for looking into those gas and oil leases and get the maximum benefit to the public school fund and the kids, and not going into the pockets of these oil companies to make them richer and richer. You know, maybe the top manager, he'd have to take a pay cut instead of, 80 million a year, he might have to take 75 million, something like that. But that's what I do.
Oh, then I'll come to
Paul Lager, Tarrant County. I feel that I've just listened to the choir speaking in unison. Congratulations. One of you made a commitment that should you not make it through the primary into a runoff, that you would lend your support to the one that does make it through. Can I hear from the remaining 2 if you would follow that same philosophy of throwing your support to get Bush out?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Debbie?
Debbie Terry, Denton County Republican Assembly. Gentlemen, a lot of our state reps, who we have the greatest affection and respect for, have chosen to endorse the current commissioner. Some of them work closely with him on other projects, but apparently, under further questioning, a lot of them are not aware of private-public partnerships that are in the background and other things that the Alamo issue has brought forth. It seems like the Senate interim hearing brought some of these challenges about transparency to the fore. Could you just tell us briefly in bullet point form how this Alamo issue has helped you identify ways in which you would run this office very differently? Just quick bullet points, and direct it to the state reps.
Well, there have been several state reps, I would say maybe 5, 7, 8, no state senators, no slate, except for one in Houston, small slate. If you look at endorsements, he's not winning the battle by a long shot. Whether it's Tea Party endorsements, which we share among the 3 of us, he's really not doing very well. And I've noticed all those state reps that have endorsed,
So to answer your question, Jerry answered most of them. You know, you have your executive committee that voted 57-1 in the Republican Party to be transparent with your records and to make primary focus that Battle of 1836. And then you go all the way until probably mid-October, and the Reimagine the Alamo plan has been skirted. His tone has changed. You haven't even seen the Reimagine. The website was taken down. A new website came up to say, we don't need this, we got to focus on the Battle of 1836. His whole demeanor changed 180 degrees once he was called out. Then you got to go to Senate Finance Committee and get scolded by the senators up on that stand. And he says, I'm protecting the liability of my board members. We have a fiduciary duty to the citizens of the state of Texas. Now here, finding out today, February, we still haven't gotten transparent records, even though he said he was going to make them transparent. Back then, he told the Senate, yeah, they're transparent, but you got to pay to get the records. I don't know where that is free. But to be honest with you, we've got to solely concentrate on what is needed for the citizens of Texas to protect the Alamo and to convince Texans, their constituents, that what we're doing is the right thing.
Great. Comment on that?
Well, let me just say briefly, as far as responsibility of the legislature, I really don't think they ought to be let off the hook that easy. We had a massive statewide educational lobby, whatever you want to call it, when we came up with $170 million to continue with this disaster. We lobbied the state legislature, we sent them emails, we had thousands of people calling in. They can't come up and say we didn't know. They should have known. I don't know if their staffers were throwing the stuff in the trash can, but that's their responsibility. They should have known. So it shouldn't be new to them. But when that didn't work, nobody in the state knew anything about this outside of San Antonio. We started the SaveTheAlamo.us website and social media, trying to get the word out to the rest of the state. The media would not cover it. They wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. I'm sure that's why some of the state legislatures don't want to go up against the Bushes, a sitting politician, they're all in cahoots. But that's what we did. We tried to get the word out. I went on some radio shows all over the state, tried to get the word out. But even to this day, like I told you earlier, they're probably 20% no, even now. And that's going to have to change fast. Now, as far as these shell corporations, my answer would be, except for the one that Mr. Patterson mentioned about the private individuals raising money, that should be a 501. But the others that Bush has created, they're getting reimbursed every month by the state anyway. Those all be open GLO employees, nothing hidden. It's all transparent. Any taxpayer can go and see who's getting paid for what. That's the way it ought to be. They're all working for the Alamo. The Alamo's under the GLO. There's no reason to have these public-private things just to hide the money games. And Bush has turned this thing, what was originally going to be $45 million, into $450 million. He's turned it into the biggest pork barrel slush fund probably in the history of the state of Texas. So that all needs to change once he's defeated, and we will.
Okay, we are out of time as far as questions. We'll go to summation. 2 minutes each of you. We'll go in reverse order that we started with. And so, Rick, you're going to start. You can come on up here. Oh, so you get 2 minutes for your wrap up.
All right.
You know, most people think that the people of Texas did not respond and try to help the Alamo. Well, that's not true. Travis sent the letter out on February 24th. It went all over the colonies in 4 or 5 days, and those people started immediately enlisting, forming companies, getting ready to go to San Antonio, trying to go down there. And 1 week after the Alamo fell, Sam Houston got to Gonzales, and he already had 500 men there. A couple of weeks later, he had pulled back to the Colorado River. He had almost 2,000 men. So it's not that the people didn't come, it's that they didn't know in time. When they found out, they did respond. So 2,000, that's 10 times the Alamo garrison. But it was too late. The only ones that could get in there were the nearest town of Gonzales, the famous 32 that got in. So that's the problem. We've got the time. He only had 12 days before the fall. We've still got 2 weeks plus before the early vote starts, plus we've got modern media. So we don't have any excuse if we all do our duty. I mean, every single one of us in this room and people all over Texas. I've been trying to tell everybody this. If they will do it, we could notify every voter in this state within a week. Easy. So that's what we're going to have to do if we're going to ensure Mr. Bush is replaced. That we've all got to help. Please. Now, I will tell y'all, I was very fortunate and proud. I got #1 on the ballot in Tarrant County. So y'all please spread the word every way you can. Facebook, phone calls, emails, whatever. And help us. And we can win this. And together we can win it. We will win it. And together we will save the Alamo and we will save our heritage. Thank y'all so much. I would be deeply honored to have your vote. Please spread the word.
Well, let me start off with something my son shared with me recently. My son, as I mentioned, is one of President Trump's Marine One pilots. He had an opportunity to lift General Mad Dog Mattis recently. Had a conversation with General Mattis, and General Mattis told him that, Travis learned that General Mattis has a bear rug in his den. The bear's not dead, he's just afraid to move. I ain't making this stuff up. You mentioned, Debbie, the susceptibility of the state reps to Pete. It's the same thing that certain people have been susceptible to Republican formulaic rhetoric for quite some time. And let me give you an example. I am a small government Republican. I cut the budget. I cut FTEs. That's what P is saying. But he has 75 employees hidden in a 501c3 that are being paid for by state dollars. You have to be smarter because people will tell you what you want to hear. I think I'm the exception, just to make you like it. And we've had enough of that. I also want to tell you that I think we're going to be in a runoff. Our momentum is moving away from George P. Bush very, very rapidly. And as I said, I'll support any of these gentlemen. But then we're in a runoff. And then we have to consider who can win on the 22nd of May. And I think I can. It's not because I'm better. It's because I've been on the Republican Party ballot quite a bit. Sometimes I've won, sometimes I've lost. But we have to get him in a runoff if we can't beat him outright, and I think I can beat him on the 22nd of May, because I will love it. I would rather be in a runoff than win outright, because I got 2.5 months to mess with him, and he needs to be messed with. I ask for your vote. I'd be honored to have your vote. We're not going to agree on everything, but I'll always be straight with you. Thank you.
All right, so everybody knows that this race, and I know y'all have heard of other candidates and their races and everything, but I think you can see that this race is specifically targeted at Texans and the heritage of Texas. And you've heard from 3 passionate guys up here that want to preserve and protect the Alamo and its historic and architectural integrity. It started back in 2015 when the current commissioner took office and moves to get rid of the Daughters of the Republic of Texas, and they're no longer there with their artifacts. They're 4 or 5 blocks away. They got that out of the way, so now we can move forward with this plan to reimagine, and only to change it up at the last moment when re-election occurred and he was called out. We do not need that type of attitude that he referred to the Texas General Land Office as a dog catcher's position while he was campaigning for his dad for presidency. He goes out of state during the hurricane relief efforts for campaign fundraisers for his re-election in the state of Texas. Who are we representing in Austin for this permanent school fund? So I ask y'all, when y'all go to the polling booths, 2 things to remember and 2 things to think about when you look at the names on the list. One of them is, who's going to preserve and protect Texas heritage? And who's going to be qualified for the position, for that position? May 6, 1836, Texians went to fight for the Alamo. And out from the ashes rose a great nation. But on May 6, 2018, Texans are going to go back and fight for the Alamo, and this time they're going to do it through ballots. So I ask for y'all's vote this primary. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, in order to save time, we've gone away from paper ballots to standing ballots, but we, to not